So, have you ever thought about how a country gets its annual financial checkup? How does it take stock of its economic health? Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today. National income. Think of it like a nation's official report card. It's this one single number that tells a massive story, and we're going to unpack it.
Right, so it really all boils down to this one big question. How do we actually know if a country is getting richer, like year after year? I mean, it seems like a massive, almost impossible thing to calculate, right? But there is a system.
And that system, the one that answers that huge question, is exactly what we're going to break down right now. It all starts with getting our heads around the core idea itself. What is national income anyway?
Okay, so the textbook definition you see here might look a little complicated. I get it. But let's just simplify it. Imagine taking the grand total of every single salary, every bit of rent paid, all the interest earned, and all the profits made by everyone who calls a country home. You just tally all of that up over 1 year. That's it.
Or to put it even more simply, think of it as the final price tag on everything a country produces and sells in a year. We're talking everything from cars to haircuts. Now, the term you've probably heard for this is GDP, right? Gross domestic product. That's the most common way we measure all this stuff.
But this isn't just about some dry statistic. It's really about a nation's journey. And this whole idea of measuring India's income, it's not new at all. In fact, it has a really fascinating history that goes back, believe it or not, over 150 years.
Yeah, just look at this timeline. It's pretty cool. The very first attempt to figure this all out was way back in 1868. Then you see a more scientific method pop up in the 1930s. The first official government report finally landed in 1951, and the whole system just keeps evolving, even today, with the formation of the National Statistical Office.
Okay, so how do economists actually calculate this massive number? Well, they start by breaking the entire economy down into 3 core engines, or sectors as they're officially called.
So this first chart gives us a snapshot of India's economy right after independence. And just look at that. Back in 1950, a massive 55% of the entire economy was based on what's called the primary sector, which is, mostly agriculture.
Okay, now for the really interesting part, the incredible transformation. Let's fast forward to today. That huge agricultural share, it's shrunk all the way down to under 18%. And at the same time, the services sector has just exploded to over 54%. It's a completely different economic landscape, driven by things like technology and globalization. So to really get this shift, let's quickly look at what's actually inside each of these engines.
All right, first up is the primary sector. This is pretty much the foundation of any economy. We're talking about everything that comes directly from the earth. Just think about the food on your plate or the wood in your furniture. It all starts right here. Next, we have the secondary sector. This is where we take all those raw materials and actually make things. This is the world of factories, construction sites, and power plants, basically transforming raw goods into finished products.
And finally, we have the engine that really dominates the modern Indian economy, the tertiary sector, also known as the service sector. This is all about providing a service instead of a physical product. It's your bank, your internet provider, the store you shop at. It's a huge part of our daily lives. All right, so we know what makes up the economy, but now we need to talk about the how. Specifically, how on earth do economists put a price on all this activity? Well, it turns out there are 2 different ways to look at the value.
So let me just ask you this. When we try to calculate the value of, say, a brand new car, are we using the price you see in the showroom, or are we using the actual cost it took to build it? The answer is, well, it kind of depends on what you're trying to measure.
And this right here shows the 2 sides of that coin. Market price is the easy one. That's the sticker price you and I actually pay, which includes taxes like GST. Then there's factor cost. That's the price before any of those taxes are added on. A good way to think of it is the cost to get the product out of the factory door, covering wages, rent, and profit.
Okay, so we've covered what we count and how we price it. But there's one last really crucial piece of this whole puzzle. Whose income are we actually counting?
Now, this might seem pretty obvious at first, but it can get a little tricky when you have people moving across borders for work or even just for tourism. So who actually gets included in a country's final tally?
The key term here, the one economists use, is normal resident.
And listen, it's not just about citizenship. It really boils down to two simple things. One, do you ordinarily live in the country? And two, is your main economic life, your job, your spending, your saving, centered there?
So who's in? Well, pretty much anyone, citizen or not, who has lived and worked in India for at least a year. It also includes Indian citizens working for the country in other places, like in an embassy abroad, because their main economic interest is still tied to India.
And who's out? Well, that would be foreigners working for international groups like the WHO or in their own embassies here in India. Also, tourists and students don't count because their economic center is still back home. And the same goes for foreign technical experts who are just here for a short time, less than a year.
So, here's the crucial point. When you add all of this up, the three sectors, the way you price everything, and who you decide to count, what you end up with is so much more than just a statistic. You get a story. A story of how a country's economy works, how it has changed over time, and maybe even where it's headed.
And that right there is why this all matters. Because when you take that one big number and you divide it by the population, that's how you get GDP per capita, suddenly you have a really powerful tool to see how your country stacks up against the rest of the world.
And to see just how powerful this idea really is, just look at this number, 225 rupees. That was India's per capita income according to its very first official report. It's just an incredible benchmark that really shows you how far the economic journey has come in the last 75 years or so.
But this brings us to a final and I think really crucial question. All these numbers, they give us the price of a nation's economy. And don't get me wrong, that's incredibly useful. But does a nation's price truly equal its value? I mean, what about things like clean air, or people volunteering, or just the strength of a community? National income is a powerful tool for sure, but it also reminds us that some of the most valuable things in life, well, they just don't come with a price tag.